Welcome back to another episode of Outwitting Statistics in Search of a Better Business. We have a very special guest today. I have Kraig Gillies with the Evolved CEO. I'm super happy that he's come on because he has the opportunity to work with high-performing entrepreneurs, which resonates with our mission and goal, which is to unpack, discover the tips, tricks, hacks, mindsets that are allowing these business owners to be successful and find out how you can avoid the statistics of going under in the first couple of years. Happy to have you here, Kraig. If you want to give a quick intro and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So, as you said, my name's Kraig Gillies. I was born and raised in New Zealand, small country town in New Zealand, so very humble beginnings. Moved to Australia, Sydney, Australia in 2007, and now live on the Sunshine Coast, Queensland, Australia, with my wife and 3 kids, 2 teenage daughters and a 10-year-old son. Working from home, living an amazing lifestyle, living my passion and purpose by helping people evolve, particularly highly successful, influential businessmen. And through helping them, it helps the people that they're responsible for. So that's a little bit about me.
I like what you said before you came on the podcast about not necessarily being able to work with thousands of people, but through your efforts with the ones you do work with, you're able to touch thousands of lives. I think that's pretty powerful as a concept.
Yeah, totally.
Something else that you mentioned before you came on, we were talking about that you started in corporate, and I share a similar background or story. I started in corporate working for Walmart. And so just out of curiosity, like you're doing stuff that works directly with entrepreneurs. You are an entrepreneur. You're a coach to entrepreneurs. Did you see yourself doing this when you were a kid? What's the backstory on Kraig as an itty bitty?
So Kraig as a kid was a very big thinker, big dreamer, like always thought that he was going to be highly successful. Growing up in a small country town of 800 people, it's very insular, right? So to dream big and to see what's possible when you're watching movies and stuff, that got me really excited. I'm a very kind of driven, motivated, extrovert type person. But I had absolutely no idea what I was going to do for a profession. All I knew I was good at and I loved and continued to get better at was rugby. So I played a lot of rugby. I was very sporting. I didn't lean towards the academic. I did okay academically, but it wasn't really my bag. Went to boarding school, played age grade rugby for New Zealand, and was really in those kind of school leadership roles and playing representative rugby and captain of the first 15 and all that sort of stuff. But I had absolutely no idea what I was going to do for a living or a profession when I left school. And my rugby career started to slow down or die down as I went into playing adult premium A-grade rugby. So my guidance counselor at school actually said, I got 2 job interviews for you. One's a real estate agent and one's an insurance broker. And I said, I know what a real estate agent is, so I'll go and meet with the guys that's the insurance broker. And I had no idea. And a week later, I started my first job in corporate in an industry that I didn't even know existed when I was a high school kid. So I kind of fell into corporate. And then when I was in there, I just continued to climb the ladder because I was driven, and I just got into the sales arm of the business and so forth. And even though I wasn't passionate about it and I didn't love it, I kind of got myself so ingrained by climbing to a point where I was earning good money and living a good lifestyle that I didn't feel like there was any way out. I felt like that was my lot, right? Yeah. But I also had this entrepreneurial brain that just constantly thought about all these things that I want to be doing and seeing what other people are doing. And back then, so I started employment 1998. 2000. That shows my age, right? 1998. But it was in the 2000s where I saw the real surgence of the online marketing industry, and that really piqued my attention. So when we moved to Sydney, I actually got moved industries from insurance into a really fast growing online marketing company called Reach Local, which is a US company that came into Australia. They built a bid management platform predominantly for managing Google AdWords right back in the day when Google AdWords was fresh. So I started with that company, and it was the most exhilarating, exciting time of my corporate life, is because we were literally moving yellow pages or print advertising onto Google, and it was like the greatest new thing. Like, everybody's going on about AI right now. Well, when I started in online marketing, everybody was talking about Google, and
Right.
being able to move people and help them get incredible results on Google. That really kind of sparked my interest and really sent me on a new trajectory. So that was an exciting transition, because insurance was boring, let's face it.
Very, very boring, I imagine, and yet
Yeah.
we all need it. So thank goodness there are people that are willing to do what they do, right?
Yeah.
Um,
That
it's
online marketing space, we were talking before we started, you were talking about the amount of small business owners that don't last and they go out of business. Well, that was the space we were in. We were focusing on the SMEs and helping them get leads and so forth. But yeah, the statistics back then, and still the statistics now in Australia, 95% of small businesses fail within their first 5 years. And that is like crazy ridiculous, considering we were like driving leads and sales volume like you couldn't believe, to think that a business would fail. And that kind of led me into learning more about running a business and being a business owner, because I'd never run a business. I was in corporate until now. And I noticed that it wasn't the lack of leads and funnels and websites and all that sort of stuff. It was more the skills and development of a lot of these business people. They were good at their trade or they're good at their industry, but they weren't good at the overarching everything that incorporates a business. And they usually just burn themselves out. They usually just get so stressed. They're spinning all the plates. They're trying to do everything. And they just get to a point where they go, it was easier just being an employee. I saw that a lot. Yeah.
I think that's probably still the case. And before we get too far, there's a couple things I want to unpack or touch on. You mentioned how when you started in marketing, Google was hot and fresh and new, and now we have this trend with AI, and our companies help and facilitate riding this wave. I have a tendency to believe that a lot of opportunity is born whenever there's more volatility, right? Whenever there's a lot of volatility, things are changing. That's when the opportunity is to really make those big jumps in business and life, in finances, whatever. And we're on the cusp of another one. And yet, something else that I'm noticing, it can go against the ones that fight the change, that don't embrace or learn to adapt. I've had conversations here recently with business owners that are like, well, 8 or 9 years ago, it worked like this, and da 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 da. I'm sure you observed during that period of time similar, and we know since that has passed, we know what the result is. So I'm curious if you elaborate. The ones that did not adopt, where did that go, and where is it led now for the ones that did adopt, so that cyclically we can analyze. AI is a trend right now. There will be another one that comes along. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, to your first point around opportunities and volatility, you did right. If you go and look into history, the greatest and biggest companies that exist in the world, at least 80% of them started in a crisis or in a really volatile market where everybody is just like freezing up.
Mm-hmm.
There's that small percentage that are creating opportunities and scaling like to the moon, right? So there's that. So to the other point of that conversation, so many people have got fixed mindsets. So many people get locked into a way of being and living, and it's kind of like this false belief system that we're all just trying to create a comfortable life, but we are supposed to evolve at the same time. And the world evolves and things change and technology, and it's speeding up, right? Like AI, the exponential growth of AI over any other past pre-technology time is insane. Like when you think about the self-learning of it, it's not reliant on humans. Like we give it some commands, but then it's a self-learning organism. So it's going to be the greatest time and the worst time for people, dependent on whether they're willing to educate themselves and adjust to change. So you're going to have business owners that are thinking AI is going to put me out of business. And then you've got the same business owner you've got a different business owner in the exact same industry that is like, this is going to help me exponentially grow my business. So the only difference is the mindset of the operator to whether they see this as an opportunity or a threat. And as you said, it's not just AI, it's everything. A competitor comes into the marketplace. Is it a threat? It's kind of like wherever McDonald's opens up, KFC in Australia will open up right beside it. Now, they could think that that's a threat, or they could think that that's just going to bring a volume of more people who want takeaways and they've got choices, so they're both going to win, right? So it's just always a mindset. It's always a choice of how you view things. And a lot of people have got fixed mindsets and they are not good with change. It really stresses them out.
Would you categorize that being able to adapt and cope with stresses or embrace change is going to be one of those key pillars of whether you probably should be focused on being an entrepreneur, or maybe just how's it put? I had a mentor of mine put it as an entrepreneur, right? A high operating entrepreneur inside of somebody else's business versus being an entrepreneur. Familiar with the concept?
So there has never been a greater time in history to start a business, to be an entrepreneur, to try something new, there's an even playing ground with AI, right? You could literally jump into AI being a non-business owner and master a niche and become highly successful. And this is happening all of the time. But what I see, like a lot of the clients that we work with, they're like Gen X, right? They're kind of like my age. They'll be late 30s through to mid 50s. We've picked up so much knowledge, so much belief systems, so much learning in our first 10, 15, 20 years of business that we're not very adaptable. Like we try to continue to do things the way they've been done based on legacy, but the stress, that word stress, it is the biggest killer of human beings. It's actually one of the key factors in the Evolve CEO. When executives and CEOs and high-level successful founders come to us, there is usually a pain point. They're usually physically burnt out. Or their marriage is on the rocks is because they've just been so over energy in their business, or their business is struggling because they're not innovating. It's either one of those three or all of those three, or they're just looking to transition to the next stage of life. And every single one of them, because my wife is an energy healer and a spiritual worker, she's in our program, every single one, bar none, has to do some deep inner healing around the buildup of compounded stress in our mind, in our body, and our spiritual connection. Is because in the physical world, it's like we've turned ourselves into robots, that we will push ourselves so hard to do what we think we need to do to win in the physical world, which is climbing the ladder, making the money and all that sort of stuff. We don't realize how much pressure and sacrifice we put on ourselves. And then you'll have these influencers online that'll talk about hustle and grind and just never sleep and work hard and all that sort of stuff. And all they're doing, they're just encouraging burnout, right? Like corporate executive and business burnout is through the roof. All illness and disease is all created from stress and imbalance, right? And you look at people's health in the world right now. So business people, entrepreneurs, they are susceptible to high stress and they start to get addicted to it. They start to feed off it. They start to think that they can't function without it. I'll give you an example. I'm actually 3 days of going off caffeine. And I know that I was using it for the wrong reason. I was using caffeine for energy because I love being high energy. I love being like on the game, just buzzing, conversations and all that sort of stuff. But I knew that I was using it for the wrong reason, that I was pushing myself into poor adrenals, right? And I've just had to pull back. This is the world we're living in. It's like humans just want for so much and they push themselves so fast and they're just burning their adrenals out to try and keep up with everything. And they're just spinning their plates. I went on a bit of a tangent. I hope that covered what you were talking about.
It's going to be followed by a question, which is, since this is something you deal with at the highest levels and on down, right? You see it at the highest levels on down, and this is what you help coach. Do you have any tips or advice for anybody listening of where to start trying to repair that, or try to find some balance to regain a sense of, well, balance or control over that situation?
Yeah, I think if you don't mind, I'll answer that by telling a story of how I burnt myself out. So in 2015, 2016, I moved my family back from a contract in Singapore. So I was relocated into Singapore to build out Southeast Asia for a global online marketing software company, and it ended shortly. And it ended way before it was meant to. And I'd worked so hard and pushed myself so hard that I was on the brink of burnout. And when I came back to Australia, that's exactly what happened. I burnt myself out. I was stressing. I was overthinking. I was using alcohol to try and relax. And my health was out of balance. My wife and kids, they didn't even like who I was. I was scary around my kids because I was so volatile. I was just so on the edge, thinking about what's next, is because I was always that driven, need to be successful. And when that contract ended and I felt like I had to start again, it was like the weight of the world just come collapsing on top of me. Even though I had finances and my life was good and everything was fine, I couldn't see it. And this is because of this deep internal programming that a lot of entrepreneurial, especially men, they develop right from childhood all the way through to adulthood, that we have this expectation on ourselves, that we push ourselves so hard to achieve these goals and this success that we don't give ourselves the rest and repair that we need to be able to enjoy a good balanced life, because we're constantly striving, right? And we get so excited, and the amount of noise and information and social media and stuff that's coming at it just speeds that all up. So I actually burnt myself out. I actually had a bit of a breakdown, and I needed to get professional help. So I went to AA to stop the alcohol, because I needed to get alcohol out of my life because it was just a bad vice. But then I made the decision, and this is the answer to your question. And I wanted to tell my story so that it's so relatable, because I've been there. I had to make the decision to make myself the number one business. So I was always striving to build companies, businesses, make money. It was always about money, finances, money, just compounded, good investments, all that sort of stuff. And I would go to the gym and I'd exercise and I'd do all that sort of stuff, but I never actually put myself first, made myself the number one business focus. And when I did that, things started to change. When I started putting mental health routines into my daily practices, which as simple as just giving my mind silence, right? So I would never give my mind silence. It was always on. It was always looking for the next thing. So even if I sat down to relax, I'd put on TV, or I'd pick up my phone and I'd be scrolling through social media. And you might think that that's relaxing, but it's not. It's actually firing up the neural pathways and it puts your brain into a lot of neurological dysfunction. And this is the key. If we do not manage our mind and give our mind downtime and silence and order our mind in certain times of the day, especially when we go to bed so that we can get a good night's sleep, the mind controls the body, the autonomic nervous system. You are just going to create stress. You're going to create neurological stress, and you're going to create physiological stress, and you're going to get disconnected from your spiritual intuitive connection, and you're just going to run from your ego. So when I made myself the number one priority, I literally had to slow right down. And that was so hard for me, because it was like I was dying. So it's like Greg not going at 100 miles an hour and thinking and always brain scheming the next big thing. It was really, really, really hard. But it was the key, and it was the turning point, and it sent me on this totally different trajectory, which I now have a life that I don't work that many hours. I earn a lot more money. I serve at a much higher level. My marriage is better now than it's ever been. My children have evolved unbelievably because of the example that my wife and I are through our own personal evolution. And that is what ultimately we all want. But that entrepreneurial, ego-driven mind never slows down enough for us to actually put ourselves first so that we can actually become the best version of ourselves. We only ever become the best version of the thought of the ego. Does that make sense?
It does. That resonates with the principle my dad instilled with me since I was a small child. He calls it the lifeguard principle. And it just comes down to, if you are not taking care of yourself and you're not able to stay head above the water, then turning to somebody else and trying to help them, it's not going to work out too well. So focusing on self-care, which he's got some interesting principles that go align with that too, where sometimes my self-care is stepping out and helping others. So instead of me trying to focus on my business or deal with my problems, I'll help somebody else and align to help them, and somehow that reciprocally ends up helping me kind of have a reboot. Do you see that with
100%.
what you do as well?
Well, we're all humans are spiritually connected. So we do a lot of spiritual work with our clients because we're multidimensional beings, right? So we're connected. When you give, you receive. It's just it's universal law, right? It's cause and effect. Do a good thing, receive a good thing. It might not receive it straight away, but you will in some way, shape, or form. You just might not see it. So that is all part of being a good, evolved human being. But so the topic is a lot more around the business people that go out of business, don't fulfill their dreams and all that sort of stuff.
Right.
And then we were talking about stress. What I see a lot, and this was my narrative, this was my language, was I knew what I needed to do. I knew that I needed to slow down. I needed to meditate. I needed to exercise. I needed to cut the alcohol and the caffeine out. I needed to do all of that. But the mind is so powerful if you let it control you that it was always just, I will when I get to this point. I will when I get to this point. I will when I get to this point. And if you think about a small business owner who's just gone into business and he's in those early years, 1, 2, 3 years, where you literally need to hustle and grind. You need to do it all. You need to make it work. That develops the mentality as, I will relax when I get here, when I get an employee, when I get to this revenue. I will take a holiday when we get to here. And that just creates this new cycle of burnout. And they never actually get to where they want to be, is because they can't keep up with it. Yeah. So
we're constantly moved, because the thing that we're aspiring, that when we get there, we're gonna stop. It changes and becomes, well, when I get 2 employees, or when I hit this revenue marker, or X, Y, Z, name it. Right.
So what typically happens is they kind of get over that. If they make it through those first 3 years and they get into a good cash flow position, they give themselves a breathing space, but they know that they can't take a step back. So that's when they might take a holiday and have a breathing space and just go, yay, we're won, but then they'll just go straight back into growth mode. So they didn't give themselves enough rest to actually recharge and recalibrate so that they can evolve the business smarter, not work harder. And they just stay in that work harder cycle, that if it's meant to be, it's up to me, and nobody can do it as good as me. And every time I delegate, they let me down, or my employees, I can't even find good ones. Like all of that sort of stuff just starts playing on the mind, that it becomes their truth. And then they've literally created themselves a high-paying job with extra stress, because they don't actually earn that much more themselves take home than what they were as a high sought after professional or employee. Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's when their mind is just like, what's the point of this? I'm working 6 days a week. My wife's upset with me. I don't get to go to all of my kids' stuff. And that's typically when they'll just go, what's the point? Like, I'm going to give up on those big dreams is because this isn't for me anymore. Or something will happen to their business, or COVID will come along and their business will collapse. Or there's so many variables, right? And honestly, even though it's the greatest time to get into business, it's the easiest time to get into business, a lot of people shouldn't. A lot of people aren't cut out for it. Straight up, not cut out for it. Like, if you're a highly skilled tradie or technician or something like that, and you don't have that entrepreneurial flair, you will probably be able to make more money as a very, very high paid consultant or employee to a good, strong, big, reputable company than trying to go out on your own. But then there's a variable as well, right? Because I'm helping a lot of people reduce their business and go into higher specialized consulting area where they've got less employees, less stress, and they earn more personally. So it's less turnover, but it's really high profit margins, and it enables them to really, really focus on their genius zone and get paid really well accordingly. So it's up to the individual, but personal development is key. Like, you can't stop developing yourself because we've got to evolve. We've got to keep up. Like, it's going pretty fast, right? Like, what's happening at the moment, I think it's going extremely fast, and you can either ride the wave or you can get beaten up by it.
You keyed in on personal development, and my observation is that any of the successful business owners that I know have interviewed, have had the opportunity to just chat with on a one-off basis, they're all continuing to strive to level themselves up mentally, physically, spiritually, all of it. And you were describing a second ago about how people get to this place of burnout, and it's almost mandatory or key that you are in grind mode when you're starting a business. There's just not a lot of way around that. You have to have a certain amount of tenacity. You're working late, you're staying over, you're doing extra work, trying to make sure you don't lose the account you just acquired, blah, 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 blah. And yet there's almost, you reach a point where I think this is where you're kind of going with it, is you have to unlearn some of the habits you learned that got you the success to get to that level. But then you have to unlearn some of those things to go to the next level still. Is that right?
100%.
Okay. Yeah. So let's talk through some of that. What do you see as, number one, the signal that it's time to do that, right? Because I think if you do that too early, that's also a key for failure in business. You could go under because you didn't stick it out long enough. What are the signals that you should start making that transition? And then number two, does it have to be a hard transition, or you have like a formula you've come up with? Fingers crossed. Please tell me the formula that can get you there without having that mental breakdown. Because it resonates with me, this concept or idea of like sort of being addicted to the stress. On the date of this recording, it's my wife and I's 8th year married. We're celebrating our anniversary, and I took off for lunch, and I noticed there's this little like tingle in the back of my head. I'm like, what's happening? Oh, I'm not sitting down and working today, and it feels weird, and it bugs me. So I'm just curious, like, what do you do to start moving outside of that?
So that's the key, right? So when we work with clients, we don't talk about business stuff until months into the program. What we do is we unpack and heal and realign somebody from all of their learnings from their past. So I specialize in doing inner child work. So I clear parental programming, I clear emotions, I clear everything. Because when we're children, right, we go through these development stages, and our brain goes through development stages. And everything we're exposed to creates the neural pathways in our mind, which creates the belief systems, which creates the behaviors, which creates the actions. And even as a 40-year-old man in business, a lot of our behaviors and actions are driven by emotions and what we believe about ourselves that we picked up as a 5 or an 8-year-old child. So if we don't unlearn and release those, that's what gets most of these guys into trouble, is because it's exactly to your point. You had this pang of nervousness that you were actually going out and having lunch with your wife when you should be working. So deep rooted in the mind, in the unconscious mind, there are programs in there that is just like, I need to be validated, I'm not good enough, I feel guilty if I'm not working hard. And that could have been picked up from any stage of your life, right? Because that's just the way we're brought up, right? So we help, even like we got multi-millionaires. We got clients that run multi-billion-dollar hedge funds, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're all still humans. They've all been born and grown through a stage and picked up all of these beliefs, but the world views them on, you're highly successful, so you must have, your whole life must be amazing, because the world views people based on status and wealth. Let's face it, they do. We've all been programmed status and wealth. So here we are judging and comparing ourselves on status and wealth, which creates this guilt when we're not working, we're not doing enough, because deep down we don't feel like we're good enough. So when you unlearn somebody else's belief system, generational programming, societal programming, environmental programming, when you let go of all of that and really come into yourself and find out who you truly are and re-identify with who you are, you let go of so many attachments. And when you let go of so many attachments about who you should be or what you need to do and all that sort of stuff, you actually start achieving more by doing less and less stress, and you create a more balanced life. And this is how we start to work smarter. So it doesn't matter how much tips, tricks, strategies, business ideas, marketing, all that sort of stuff I bring to my clients. It's not what they need. It's not what they need, because they can literally ask Mr. Google or run a search on AI, ChatGTP, and they can get all of those answers anyway. What they need is to let go of all of the old programs and belief systems that they picked up from somebody else, so that they can step into the next level of themselves. And we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And if we are so caught up in our mind around hustling and grinding and who we think we are based on somebody else's beliefs and programs and environments, we're actually never tapping into our highest potential. So we need to release and let go of all of that programming out of the mind, so that we can have a calmer mind, so that we can have a balanced central nervous system, so that we can have a healthier physical body, that we don't get anxiety and stress and these emotions that charge us to make us keep pushing harder. And the reason why I was using caffeine is to just fire up those adrenal glands so I can get adrenaline for energy, which is fake energy and it's bullshit. And I know it, but it's so easy to just pick up a cup of coffee and just go, whoa, now I've got energy to work. You know what I mean? We are all programmed. It's the human condition. Every single human being on this planet, regardless of whether you're a billionaire or you're in a startup business, you have got programming that if you don't release the stuff that doesn't serve you and develop the stuff that does, you will have a ceiling. You will be surprised how many wealthy people are miserable, because they thought that the success would bring them all of the love and the happiness. And they've gone through divorce, they're unhappy, they're unhealthy, a whole lot. Like, how many wealthy people and celebrities and stuff end up in rehab? They're just constantly on. They're just pushing. They're just trying to be more and to get more validation and more money and more praise and more approval. And it's actually not in alignment with why they're here. That's why I love to hear you say that part of your self-care is to help somebody else just out of the will of your heart. That gives you more evolution than building another $1 million in your company.
For certain. And I've found that there's been a huge transition from when we started the company. When I started the company, I had no great love for marketing at all. It was strictly, I found a skill set I could do. I was looking to create a cash flow to build wealth so we could invest in real estate, etc. And yet over time, in order to dig deep and stay in it, not give up, it's morphed and changed more towards, I love seeing our clients succeed. I love seeing that through the efforts we bring to them, as long as they're a willing participant, they're making good use of what we're bringing to them, that they're able to feed their families or keep their employees employed during difficult times, helping mentor and grow our employees, show them how to grow as people and their skill sets and things like that. It's expanded way past just this incessant need for more money, and it's developed into a much bigger fulfillment for me. Is that making sense?
100%. So if we talk about the Maslow hierarchy of needs, once you get all of your fundamental needs, right, met, so your shelter, food, belonging, connection, all of that sort of stuff, at the top of the Maslow hierarchy of needs is self-actualization. Once you have done the hard work, I'm not saying to just that like 18-year-olds should come out of college and just go, I'm not going to work hard. I'm just going to focus on me. You're still going to do something, right? You're still going to have to grind it out. You're still going to have to build something if you want a good lifestyle, if you're an entrepreneur. But you've gotten to a point now where a lot of my clients that have created so much success in business and finances and lifestyle that you really need to now move towards impact and legacy. And that will actually bring you more success and more financial reward, but that's not why you're doing it. That is just an energetic byproduct of delivering a bigger impact and a legacy to the market, to your family, and so forth. And when you make that switch and you start doing things for impact and legacy, you're serving higher than yourself. And when you're serving higher than yourself, you're not just thinking about what more can I get? It's what more can I do in this world to help people have a better life? And that is why we're here. That is why we are here as a soul, because we need to actualize ourselves. And once we get our fundamentals and our Maslow hierarchy of needs in order, we then need to truly identify what is our highest purpose and what is the impact and the legacy that I want to leave behind. And when you are working in that space, you will get more spiritual support. You will attract and magnetize different opportunities and people into your life because you're doing things from a different energetic platform, a different behavior, a different reason for being. And that's the key. And this is where so many of these entrepreneurs and business owners, they're hustling and grinding so that they can create a good lifestyle for themselves. And they just get to a point where it's only for themselves. They might look after their employees, but you can see the people that are just blowing through the stratosphere. They're creating businesses and they're aligned. The word alignment is key. They are aligned with doing something in business that is actually solving a real world problem. And in solving that, abundance will manifest. So they're serving at a higher level. And this is key. This is a big part of why I transitioned away from. So when I left corporate, I built a digital marketing agency. Then I had my breakdown. Then I had to go on this healing journey. And then I come out the back end of that healing journey and I went, I have to help other men who are hiding behind their masks and living the same life that I was and just pretending that everything's okay, but not dealing with their inner world. And I started helping those men. And it was the evolved man. And then it evolved to the evolved CEO because we just started attracting, as I evolved, I started attracting more high-level business leaders to come and work with us, right? And that's the key. So this is my path, and I'm going into business with a couple of my clients around social housing, social support, and making an even bigger difference in the marketplace. But everything just manifests, right? Like when you are aligned, when you're on the right path, when you balance out your life between your own health and happiness, your love and connection with your family and your wife and your kids and your close people, and you build a business that supports you and you've got aligned clients. If your clients are aligned and there is a mutual respect and you're delivering an energetic value back and forth, then you don't have to stress about losing those clients. So I remember when I first run my digital marketing business, all I stressed about was losing a client. because they're constantly prospected by somebody saying, I can do it cheaper. I'll promise you better results. I'll blah, 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 blah. And they're constantly under attack. So you're constantly on yourself worrying, am I doing the best job? Can I get more? Can I get more? Can I get more? And they're already getting enough, but you've created this kind of self-imposed stress that didn't need to be there because I was worried about losing them. Yeah.
Absolutely.
There was a lot in that, but I'm all for everything is universal law. We are spiritual beings. We are here to live out our highest soul's purpose. We are got to get our own life in order so that we can then identify the biggest impact, purpose, and legacy that we can leave behind. The rest will take care of itself. God will serve. The energetic universe will serve. Life will just be so much better. We need to help humanity evolve, and in doing that, we will be rewarded in more ways than we can possibly imagine.
I feel like I'm personally having several little light bulb moments as we're having this conversation. I'm gonna struggle through articulating this, but I'm seeing some things that I want to point out to the audience, and hopefully that can help them have some of these same light bulb moments. So you can have two people in very similar walks of life, and one can succeed and one can fail based off of the information they have in front of them. So information is a key component, number one. But then we'll take that same person, and that same person can win or succeed with that information based on how they are able to perceive that information as well. Because we were talking earlier about how we have pre-programmed things in our minds. I may have said on previous episodes and definitely on other podcasts I've attended that I am incredibly intentional with my daughter and things that I say to her, how I say to them, because I know that their minds are impressionable. You keyed in that some of the entrepreneurs you help, you work with them on things that have been trained as a child. I had a huge hang up that was caused by my dad, completely unintentional, was completely harmless, centered around this concept of children are to be seen and not heard. And I don't know when I became an adult. In fact, I'm still not sure my brain accepts that I'm an adult. Time keeps flying by. And so that caused a lot of problem whenever I would have to have conversations around business. And so that observing how that affected me, and again, it was completely innocent. The intent was not negative. That helps me focus in on trying to be intentional with her. But I think we have to be intentional with ourselves as well, because again, the same information may not have the same positive impact that it could based off of mental hangups. Did that all track? Again, I said I was going to struggle to articulate that.
No, 100%. You did right. I'll give you the prime example of exactly what you spoke about, which is not business, but it'll give you even more clarity. You can have I got 3 children, right? You can have 3 children who are all brought up exactly the same by the same parents, same environment, same language, same everything. And one might become highly successful. One might become a drug addict, and the other one might end up in jail. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. They were all brought up the same. The difference is we are souls having a human experience. And at soul level, everybody has got a different divine nature or blueprint. So my 3 kids, right? My first daughter, Georgie, she is divine manifestation. She is the type of kid that if somebody says you can't do that, she will prove them wrong. It will give her ammunition and she will just go and succeed. Yeah. My middle child is divine love. If you tell her she can't do something, she will believe you and it will make her depressed. And then my third child is divine power. If you told him that he couldn't do something, he wouldn't listen to you and he would do something totally opposite to prove that he's in control. So we have to parent our 3 kids differently is because we know who they are at soul level. So you can have 2 individuals that have had the same life experience who go into business, and one is divine power and one is divine love. And the person who's divine power will break through every single obstacle and make it work and end up being successful. And the one who's divine love cannot handle rejection, will crumble and fail. Both got the exact same knowledge, skill set, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But we're all uniquely different at soul level. People don't measure people, or people don't connect with people based on that. They connect with them based on what's your title, where'd you grow up, what college did you go to, what sport did you play, what's your education, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Just all this human stuff, right? So there's so many levels to the person. So if you truly want to help somebody expand, understand who they are in their heart more than who they are in their head.
How do we start to do that?
We need to be able to tune into people from a non-judgmental point of view. And I can say this as a parent. I'm guilty as charged, is because my inner child triggers when my older daughter, who's divine manifestation, and she doesn't listen and she challenges me, she's like a mirror to me. And I get triggered. And I hate that. But I have to then just calm down, take a step back and go, this is a good thing. I need to nurture that, not break her down, not try and break her will. Because the old generation is that, right? You're to be seen, not heard.
Right.
And you've got these kids who are supposed to communicate. So I'm divine communication. If somebody like literally shut me off and I'm not allowed to talk, it's like they've shut my soul down, because my communication is how I create. It's how I process stuff. My poor wife, she has to hear it all because I have to talk things out, right?
Right.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So we're all unique, but people are not. People need to heal themselves so that they can be more present with other people, to truly connect with who they are in their heart and in their soul, to then know how they can support and mutually respect each other. So another part of the Evolved CEO, we've actually got the Evolved couple, because once we work with a lot of these high successful businessmen, their wives see so much change in them. They say, I want to do the work as well. So then we help evolve the couple, and we break all of these dynamics that the wife picked up from her childhood and brought into the marriage. The husband picked up from his childhood and brought it into the marriage. The honeymoon period, all of that negative stuff doesn't exist because it's all heightened, it's emotional, it's just amazing, it's euphoric, right? And then you go into the marriage period, and then you go into the parenting period, and when there's children that come in, and all of a sudden, husband, you go make the money, wife, you look after the kids. That's when all the old stuff starts coming back in, and the communication and the connection with you and your wife starts to strain. And you think it's because of the kids. It's because you're tired, you're stressed, you're exhausted, and all that inner child stuff comes out. It's the parenting period. It's the marriage and the parenting period that needs the most work in a marriage, because so many couples will get to the end of the parenting period, post-parenting, when the kids are out of the nest, they've got nothing in common, and they divorce. They just separate. It happens over and over and over. It's almost, you can almost just calculate it on a percentage, the amount of people that will come together. This is why so many people aren't even getting married nowadays.
Yeah.
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 So
unfortunate.
There is a lot, right? Because we've all had a human condition. We've all had a human experience. We've all been children. We've all got malleable brains. We've picked up all of our learnings and our behaviors. It's created the foundation of our unconscious mind that then determines who we are. But we're also a soul that is here trying to live out its purpose. And this is the work that we need to do. This is why it was so important for me to make myself number one, because my burnout was literally a message to say, you're not on track, mate. You think you're on track because your mind is telling you there's a lot of money in the bank and you've got investment properties and you're successful in business, but we're going to send you into a brick wall because you're not on track at your highest level. And it was a wake-up call. It was a massive wake-up call. And so many people are in that kind of cycle of comfort where they're not actually stepping into their higher self, because you only know what you know, right? You don't know what you don't know. So we need to open ourselves up to more stuff, but we also need to be willing to let go of stuff that's not serving us And that's hard because the ego doesn't want to let go of it, because the ego wants to control. It's just like, this is my survival mechanism. If I let go of this, who am I?
Right.
So it's not easy. This is more than personal development. This is deep inner transformation work, but it's key. It's key for humans.
Are you familiar with Eckhart Tolle's work?
Yes, 100%.
It's some of the same things you're saying are resonating. I think this year I read The Power of Now, and last year I read A New Earth. And I almost feel like that book has broken my brain because of the focus around ego and letting go. I have this inner monologue genuinely of like, well, if I I want to agree with that. I want to let go of my ego. But if I do let go of my ego, I'm just going to immediately cease to exist. And I don't want that to happen. So I keep holding on to it. But anybody who's listening, read the book.
I got another book for you.
Okay. What do you got?
A Happy Pocket Full of Money.
A Happy Pocket Full of Money. Okay. Who's that by?
I can't remember the name, but it talks about quantum. It talks about energy. It talks about the relevancy of time. It talks about money. It really helps you to see it for what it truly is, not what the ego believes it is. So it's along the same lines, right, of opening you up to the unknown, which is ultimately the truth. Yeah? So Eckhart Tolle's book, so The Power of Now and New Earth, they're like a go-to book. Like, it's usually on my bedside, that if I'm not in a good state of mind, or I need to if I do my bedtime routine to wind down and stuff, I only need to read 3 or 4 pages, and it just brings me back to the truth, right, not what the stressed out, overthinking, egoic mind is telling me. And it just gives me this balance. So just a couple of pages, that's good. That's like daily mental health. It's just recalibrating the brain to let go of the stress and the dopamine addiction that we get on a daily basis, so we can have a good night's sleep. And we all know that sleep's important. And it's just those little daily disciplines where people just don't do it. They don't do it often enough because the mind doesn't allow them. It's just like you ask like high functioning entrepreneurs, stress, dopamine driven entrepreneurs to meditate. They'll just be like, can't do it. Can't do it. It's impossible. Can't do it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a struggle. It is a required discipline for me to sit down and do. I feel way better when I do. I love doing breath work, Wim Hof's different breath work styles. I love his style of breath work. But to sit down and make myself do it is always a constant struggle. We've circled around back to burnout again. And I had asked a question. I'm glad we went down the route we did. I feel like I personally have gotten a lot of gold nuggets, and I think a lot of our audience will have as well. But back to my question about, I don't presume you prescribe that we should wait until we are burnt out to make this realization that it's time. So again, the question is, what are the signals that it's time to start seeking that change, that we got to reprogram, recalibrate how we're doing things? And then number 2, I'm going to probably suggest, I think you'll probably follow suit, that it's probably best to find some people that can help facilitate this. This is probably not a done by yourself kind of thing. Do you agree with that?
Totally. Yeah. So I think the first signal for a lot of people is emotional triggers. Like if you get really irritated, if you get angry, if people trigger you, if you've got a lot of stress, if you feel anxiety and stuff like that, that's the body signaling to you that you're out of balance. Like if that stuff is just easily triggered, like somebody cuts you off in a car, or a client sends you an email to just say, hey guys, I've decided to go with another provider, and that rattles you for like 2 days, that's a sign. That's a sign that your body is in a deep state of survival stress. and it can't handle anything that is outside of you feeling like you're in control. So emotions are a signal. Energy. If your physical energy fluctuates really, really hard, that means you're in adrenal fatigue or adrenal exhaustion and you're burning your body out. And everybody is in some stage of fatigue or exhaustion, right? You don't need to be at burnout. That's the last stage. But just being in fatigue and exhaustion and using things like caffeine or whatever to keep you going, that is a sign that you're on a slippery path towards burnout. And if some big events hit you, like a death in the family or a failed business or even what happened with COVID, it could take you from fatigue to burnout like that, because all of the baseline, you're just surviving, right? So emotions, energy, and then if you're physically not healthy, if you can see that you're physically not healthy and you've got a lot of inflammation, if you've got skin issues and all that sort of stuff, your body's breaking down. You're physically, so we actually berate our bodies. Like, we get this one vessel to serve us in life, to live a long life and to be successful, but we push it and berate it and feed it, and what we do to it is not sustainable. Yeah? Those are the physical signs. It's the emotional, it's the energy levels, and it's just your health in general. Yeah? But it all starts in the mind. Every single one of those things is driven from here. If you do not give your mind silence, so the brain can only rest and repair through silence. And the only silence that people give their brains is usually when they sleep, but they will watch a movie or scroll through social media or think about their business or read emails just before they go to sleep, that their brain doesn't rest, and they don't even get REM sleep, and they wake up 2 or 3 times through the night. So they're not even going into their parasympathetic and healing and repairing then anyway. So the world has normalized stress. And you think of everything that's causing stress, like the foods that we eat. So 50 years ago, the average human would consume 2 pounds of sugar a year. Now the average human consumes 152 pounds of sugar a year.
Holy moly.
We're killing ourselves. And we're allowing the heat and the noise and the influence and the marketing from big marketers and corporates and all that sort of stuff for us to keep on doing the same thing. But then we look at everybody else and we go, well, they're doing it, so it must be all right. Their marriage is average, so I must be just normal. They drink Coke every day, so it must be, you know what? We just justify bad stuff. Now, I'm not talking about being a martyr, but I'm just like, what's really important? Because so many people will create wealth and then they'll spend that money to get their health back. Yeah?
Yeah. I'm asking you for the signs or the signals, but then when you announce them, or it's just normalized entrepreneurial life now. Like you said, we have this hustle culture, and if you look around, that's almost every business owner I know, or have one or multiple of those symptoms. So there you go. We can identify that it's time. Now, what are next steps? I know that I don't know how everybody else is, but I personally have experienced this internal conflict with reaching out and getting help. There's a pressure, of being the leader. I've got to be this strong male for my wife, for my employees. I got to hold it together. And if I welcome some kind of external help, that's somehow breaking that down. That's a story I'm telling myself in my head, or at the time that was going on, I was telling myself in my head. For anybody experiencing that, what would you tell them? How would you walk them around that internal story that's complete bullshit? And then what are next steps? Where do they need to go from there?
Yeah, well, I can talk around what I did. So I did a year-long life coaching program which focused on doing inner child work, and focused on me really, truly identifying who I am. how I got here, what created Greg Gillies, so that I could understand that I can let go of stuff because it's not mine, and I can embody new stuff which is in line with who I am. Yeah. So a lot, especially men, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of driven people, they will chase knowledge that will help them become more successful, and their brains literally get overloaded, but they're not doing enough mental health and mindfulness practices to let go of the junk that doesn't serve them, and creating space so that they don't feel like they have to work all the time. Now, this hustle grind mentality culture, I'm not against it, but I do it in chunks. So I'll do a 3-hour chunk when I am on, but I am productive, not busy. I'm not thinking for 12 hours a day about everything I want to achieve. I'm taking 3-hour chunks in my day and getting shit done, like moving the needle. And then I'm giving myself permission to let it go and trust that I've done what I needed to do and let it go. And I'll go to the gym. I've got an infrared sauna at home. I'll do wellness stuff. So I chunk my days, right? So a third of my day is for me, a third of my day is for my business, and a third of my day is for family and kids and activities and all that sort of stuff. And then on the weekends, we catch up with neighbors and friends and barbecue and stuff. It's about being highly, highly productive and aligned with the higher purpose of where you're going in life, so that you're not just thinking about all the noise. There's just too much noise. So if anybody's going to do any work, I would get over the ego and go and do work on your mental health and your mindfulness practices, because it starts here. This is what causes us the imbalance in our physical body. Because if we're over energy in the masculine mind and we're under energy in the feminine heart, our spiritual connection comes from our heart space. So if we're living our life from here, we're living a life from stress and control and worry. If we're living a life from here, there is a lot of trust and intuition and knowing. It's that inner knowing that you're on the right path. And if you inner knowing you're not on the right path, then you can use this to get on the right path and then come back into here. So we need to balance our masculine and feminine as well. That's really important, because most men, we're just all masculine. We might be feminine with our kids because we've just got this love and connection and admiration, but with most other people, even with our wives, we just go up into the mind.
Right.
And it's just always solving problems, right? Your wife says, "Oh, I'm struggling with blah, blah, blah." And we try and solve her problem. She goes, "I don't want you to solve my problem. I just want you to listen and be in your heart." But we don't know how. We weren't taught. My dad never taught me how to do that. I just solve problems. And then my wife's just like, "Stop treating me like a business." And I'm like, "Yeah, but you got a problem and I want to take away your pain, so I'm going to solve your problem." She's like, "You missed the point."
Yeah, I've had that conversation many times. Oh, man. Wow. So I've already kept you on for an hour, and I feel like I told you when you came on that I was excited to have you because I felt like you were going to resonate well with our message. I appreciate everything you've shared. Usually at the end here, I'll do a quick rapid fire on people you think are worth following, books that are worth reading. You already mentioned one that I'm going to go pick up and read personally. And then any other helpful advice to anybody that's listening.
Yeah. First point of call, whenever anybody asks me these rapids, we have to take our mental health seriously. Like, mental health is not just people who are broken, who can't work, who are depressed, who are going and seeing shrinks. Mental health is anybody who has stress, anybody who's got too much noise and too much activity in their mind. We have to focus on mental health. And I suggest getting somebody, right? Even if it's a meditation coach. You pay somebody to teach you how to meditate or be quiet, or you're actually paying for a session or go to classes, so that you're forcing yourself and paying yourself to actually be in a space where you can practice and learn and be quiet. Because if we, like you and I said, if we just try and do it ourselves and we've just come off a podcast like this and we're humming, Last thing we want to do is meditate.
Right.
It's just like, man, I'm on fire. So then we won't do it, right?
Yeah.
And then our wind down will be picking up the phone. That's another thing. I suggest that you have a time, maybe before dinner, like a 6 p.m. time, where you turn your phone off and put it in a drawer somewhere, and don't let it ruin your family time. Phones destroy family time, and I'm guilty. I still do it. Like, I don't put mine in a drawer all the time, but it gets to a point where our whole family and my wife and I are just like, technology's just got to disappear because we just need to come back together as a family. Yeah. I just focus on those two things.
Sometimes the best control of a substance or an addiction of any kind like that is just completely remove it. So I love that. Whenever it comes time for us to like get ready for the beach come summertime or whatever, it's number one, just don't bring it in the house, and then we can't eat it. So I'm all about the hiding the phones.
So you just mentioned the word addiction. We could do another whole podcast on that. Everybody is addicted to something. It's the world we live in now, right? So the other book that I highly encourage everybody to read is Atomic Habits. They need to understand how the brain attaches to habits, which then turn into addictions, and how we can unwind them. So you saying when it's out of sight, that's the first thing you need to do. It needs to be invisible, right? So when I quit drinking alcohol, my wife just said, I'm going to support you. No alcohol in the house. And that was massive for me to be able to stop it because it wasn't there. It wasn't enticing.
Right.
Yeah. Mate, we could talk for hours.
For certain. No, Atomic Habits is a great one. Any other books you'd advocate or suggest?
Yeah, I'm reading a lot around the psychology of money because I've done a work on breaking my money mindset around what it actually means. So that happy pocket full of money. So a lot of entrepreneurs need to change their mindset around what money truly is. The psychology of money. This is a really good one. It's really just an energetic mechanism for an exchange of value. We put so much attachment onto money and finances and wealth versus the energetic value behind it. So if you're running a business and there is energetic value of exchange between you and your client and there is alignment, then you'll never stress about them paying their bills. Yeah?
Right.
We just need to change. Everybody needs to, because we've been programmed differently, everybody in the world, around money, right? Because that's really what controls this world. It's the old greed mechanisms that they want as many people at the bottom doing all the hard labor, paying all the taxes, and it flows up. Yeah, so we just need to change our mindset around money because a lot of entrepreneurs' stress is always financial.
In one shape or another, always. Huh. Another light bulb moment for everybody.
100%. It's a big thing, man. Understand, change your psychology of money, and you'll actually attract way more money. Because when you worry about something, you're literally putting out to the universe, I don't want it because I don't like it. It stresses me out. So don't give me abundance. We need to be really, really mindful of all of our thoughts, our behaviors, our emotions, our actions, and everything has all got an energetic cause and effect. So if you stress about something or you feel obligated by something, you'll get more obligation and you'll get more stress. You won't get more of what you actually wanted.
It sounds like you have studied plenty of like Bob Proctor and Napoleon Hill. It sounds like you're studying them.
It's all universal. Like seriously, this stuff's been taught for thousands of years, right? It's been regurgitated by all of these professionals. But when you do the deep inner work and you let go of the attachments and the programs and all of that sort of stuff, and you redefine your psychology around things that make you stressed, you'll just go, oh wow, it's just the same language. It's just universal language. We've just got so caught up in humanity. It's got so fast. we overconsume, we're destroying the world, we're just chasing stuff for the sake of trying to fill this void, and it never gets filled. I'm telling you, some of the wealthiest people that I know, their void is not full because it wasn't the money that they were searching. It's their purpose, their belonging, who they truly are here to be. The good thing about these wealthy people is when they find that, they've got the resources to make a massive difference. And this is why we focus on the higher influential wealthy people, is because when they really do this spiritual awakening and alignment and healing work, the impact and legacy that they create is mind-blowing.
Love it. I love it, and I love your mission. If anybody wanted to get a hold of you and your wife, it looks like your website's theevolvedceo.com. Is there some other places they could reach out? You have a YouTube channel. I know you have your own podcast, I believe, right?
Yep. So theevolvedceo.com is the program of the Evolved CEO, but okay. GregGillies.com and TracyGillies.com, that displays both who am I, what I do, and who is Tracy, what does she do. And then the amalgamation of Tracy and I is the Evolved CEO.
Got it.
And then we're on all the socials, predominantly on LinkedIn because of our business-focused clients. But yeah, so our names.com and theevolvedceo.com.
Cool. And we'll be sure to drop that in the show notes. Greg, it has been an absolute blast. I don't know how our paths haven't crossed sooner, and we'll definitely stay in touch. But I want to thank you so much for coming onto the show and sharing with our audience some amazing information today.
Thanks for having me, man. It's been really enjoyable because not everybody is open to having these conversations and without it making them feel uncomfortable and redirecting it. So it's been a really pleasurable podcast. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
You mentioned earlier we could go down a whole rabbit hole and have some more conversation. So if you're open to it, I probably would love to have you back on. We can pull some of those topics out as well.
100%. You've got my details anytime.
Awesome. Again, pleasure, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thank you, Kraig. Cheers, buddy.